Hello everyone, welcome to another video tut on the visual arts content areas. This particular video tutorial will focus on the frames once again, but this time the subjective frame. So let's check it out. Okay, so as mentioned previously, the frames make up one of three content areas in visual arts, the other being the conceptual framework and practice. Now the frames are split up into four frames. We have the subjective, which we're exploring today, the cultural frame, the structural frame, and the postmodern frame. Now, just a reminder that each of these frames are an interpretive framework and they help you understand the different layers of meaning within the visual arts. Each frame has a particular point of view, and this allows you to focus on different aspects within the visual arts. So it will affect the way you approach your art making, your art criticism, and art history. So there's a link to practice. It also sets up a guide or focus for the way you explore the four agencies and their relationship within the art world. So there's your link to the conceptual framework. So now we're going to have a look at the subjective frame and what it calls into focus. Okay, so the subjective frame. Through this particular frame, you will learn how art may be understood based on your own personal and psychological experiences. Now, through this frame, art could be thought of as representing deeply felt emotions or sensory experiences. Also human consciousness, and that includes intuition, imagination, originality, creative expression, or as an aesthetic response. What this means is when you're looking at artworks, you're attempting to understand or draw focus to how a particular artwork could be seen as an emotional response by that particular artist, whether it be to what was going on at the time or just their personal experiences. What it also means as an audience member is that you get to respond to the artwork in a subjective manner, a very personal manner. So you get to draw on your own personal experiences and memories in order to make meaning from the artwork itself. Alright, so basically the subjective frame is concerned purely with the personal response on the part of the artist as well as on the part of the audience members. Here are some examples of artworks where the artist has drawn on personal experiences or human emotion or human consciousness and turned them into an aesthetic response or into an artwork. Alright, the first example on the top left is the artist Ron Mueck, and you can see that he is beyond life-size sculpture of a young boy hunched over, really draws on the human emotion of that fear and nervousness, which is contrasted with the size of the actual boy. To the right of that is an artwork by Kathy Kolowitz, which is Mother with a Dead Child, and this particular artwork heavily inspired by what was happening in her country at the time, a country where death was almost taking over. She's attempting to depict the reality of death and the sort of harshness and sadness of that, again drawing on the human emotions and absolute turmoil that was created by losing a loved one. To the right of that is the artist John Percival, and again he's depicting a scene where a cat is kind of going psycho and scratching a boy, and from the sheer facial expression you can see that the boy is in pain. Alright, so as an audience member you can almost empathise with that, or even start to think about times where maybe you have been injured by an animal. On the bottom left is Pablo Picasso, famous Weeping Woman. Alright, many of you have seen this artwork before, and again he captures the emotion of the woman and just sort of sheer pain and desperation that is created in the work, intensified by the geometric shapes and the harshness of the lines. To the right of that is the very famous The Scream by Edvard Munch, alright, German expressionist as well. It tries to capture the overwhelming and utterly intoxicating fear that is vibrating through the landscape. Alright, so each of these artists is just a quick glimpse into how artists have sort of given insight or captured a very emotive scene and tried to put that forward to the audience member. As an audience member, however, you may have associated these particular artworks with memories of your own. Okay, so how can you apply the subjective frame to your own art making? Well, as mentioned before, the subjective frame is highly personal, okay? So it requires you to create artworks that draw on your own or people close to you, on their feelings, all right? And in order to create a response to the world around them, all right? So it's heavily emotive, all right, and heavily personal. All right. Now, doing or exploring art from the subjective point of view may guide your choice of subject matter, and you may restrict it to yourself, friends, family, or things that are just of personal significance to you from your own environment, whether it's been what you've grown up with or, again, things that you have experienced. So what you choose to explore is heavily close to you and impacts upon you as a person and who you are. All right. This may lead to a highly imaginative investigation of this particular subject matter, but it also may impact upon the exploration of techniques that you choose to use. All right. So it's very likely that you will incorporate materials and techniques that either capture your personal interest or very well developed in you, so playing again to your skills. But what about the application of the subjective frame in art criticism and art history, otherwise known as art theory? Well, from the subjective frame perspective, you're attempting to develop personal responses to artists and artworks, often ones that are highly significant to you. All right. When you explore these artworks, you're looking at how they are expressive and unique objects. All right. How they highlight an artist's individual style. All right. But again, the focus is on your personal response to the work. All right. So you're offering an opinion that is yours. All right. So not the opinion of other people. All right, so when you do this, you'll be looking at, do I like it, do I not like it? What does it remind me of? What memories are provoked? What emotions are stirred up? It can be a highly sensory experience, so you might look at, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I touch? What do I taste? What can I smell? All right, so it's heavily dependent on the way you respond to the work, all right? And unlike some of the other frames, you will then use the interpretation of others, for example, art critics and art historians, to back up your personal response and not the other way around. So the subjective frame is quite interesting in that regard. Okay, so I suppose, I know I'm getting a little bit repetitive, but subjective means your personal response, all right? It's based on your experiences, your emotions, your imagination. Okay, so basically you get to have your say, but make sure you back it up. Keywords, our friends back. Alright, so before I begin though, how cute is that puppy? It's in a little hamburger. A little hamburger puppy. Anyway, in terms of your keywords, like the other video tutorials that I've already posted, you must get in the habit of not repeating words or language too often. Alright, remember, it makes you sound like you don't actually understand what you're talking about. Alright, so when you're looking at work from a subjective frame perspective, please avoid using the artist is very subjective or the artist has used the subjective frame. Alright, doesn't make sense, all right, it's repetitive, and it doesn't show a depth of knowledge. All right, instead you want to focus on demonstrating how the particular artworks that you're exploring have certain qualities and what the artist did to incorporate them. All right, so you're looking at a unification of concepts and technical choices. To put it into words you may better understand, subjective plus structural equals representation. Alright, and that was a massive plane flying over the house. Good times. Alright, so you want to give evidence that the motivation for the particular artwork was highly personal. Alright, and that's what they were looking at in terms of its function as an artwork. Alright, so very, very personal. Now, some other words that you may want to sort of throw in your response could be the idea of the artwork as a physical experience, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, you could draw on the whole sensory experience, so sight, taste, touch, hear, smell. All right. It also could be highly psychological, all right, in the sense that it could promote particular feelings or memories, all right? And it could also be highly sort of spiritual, all right, and really sort of zone in on particular religious beliefs, for example, or just spirituality as a whole. All right, now when you're exploring an artwork from the subjective frame, you may look at, well, what was your immediate impression of the work? All right, again, do you like it, dislike it? Okay, what type of feelings were evoked in you when you looked at the work? All right, anger, sadness, happiness, joy, etc. All right, did it promote a memory that you, well, remember? All right, or a personal experience that you have been through. It may have sort of brought your imagination out, all right, and let it sort of carry you away. Okay, some other keywords that you could possibly throw out besides personal, which I'm just basically contradicting myself by saying over and over again, intrinsic, moods, motivation, and an attempt to explain self through art. Right? It may also be an expression of inner life, and it could distinguish individuality. Right? So these are just a couple of keywords that you might want to chuck into your ever-extending vocab list, so give them a whirl. So it's that time again for sample questions. These ones revolve around the subjective frame, but the idea, if you are not used to this already, is to be able to pick out the key words that basically indicate why these questions are subjective. Alright, so question 1. How is the artist... Actually, why am I even... You can read. I'm just going to put on the thinking music. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, that's enough thinking music. If you haven't finished, then pause the video before I move on. Pause it. Alright, let's check out these answers, shall we? Question 1. How has the artist communicated a sense of dramatic action in this work? Tell you what, throwing out a difficult one straight off the ranks here, okay? But hopefully the words that stood out to you the most was dramatic action, alright? Number 2. Analyse how emotion is used in artworks to provoke and generate discussion about ideas and issues. Hopefully you picked up on this beautiful little word here, emotion. Question 3. Given a statement, meaning is rarely obvious. Meaning has to be made. Very, very interesting. Alright. Discuss this statement with reference to different interpretations of, art and a range of artworks. Okay, now you could interpret the idea of meaning having to be made as drawing on the audience, which means that they're presenting their own personal opinion or view of the work. So that's highly subjective, okay? But it's further enhanced in this different interpretations of art. Okay, because again, each audience member brings their own set of experiences and way of interpreting art, okay, and in that way it's highly subjective. A little bit more difficult though, that question 3. Alright, let's move on to question 4. Why is an active imagination crucial to the creation of artworks and the interpretation of their expressive meaning? In your answer, refer to artists and their work. Alright, hopefully you picked up on imagination as being a key word, alright, and even expressive. Alright, but imagination would have been enough to hint that it was a subjective frame question. Alright, question 5. Discuss the subjective nature of artworks from the perspective of the artist and the audience. Oh, look at this little guy. You're given the word subjective. Alright, if we got that one wrong, you may need to watch and listen to this video tune again. Well, that brings us to the end of yet another video toot. Hopefully it was informative and you now understand the subjective frame and how to apply it to both the creation of artworks and the exploration and interpretation of artworks. Thanks.